Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Ryan. I've got Shawn here with me, and we're going to talk with you about how we are enhancing agent management controls for AI-ready enterprises. It's a good thing I don't have to fit that on a business card. And we're going to start with some really complicated stuff here, okay? What is an agent? And I don't mean for this to be an existential question, okay? But I think what we see is there's a continuum, a spectrum of agents that starts with the very simple agents, things that are read-only, and go all the way to the other end, which are advanced agents that are fully autonomous. And of course, across Microsoft, we have a variety of tools that help you build these different types of agents. Starting with, at the left side of the continuum, those simple agents. You can build these through Agent Builder directly within Microsoft 365 BizChat. In the middle, Copilot Studio, how you're able to support a more advanced set of scenarios. And then at the far right, our developer experience is built upon AI Foundry. And the thing is, what we see is as agents become more advanced, they require more advanced governance and security. If we think about those simple agents that you're able to create through Agent Builder today, the thing is, these agents are intrinsically secure. They're intrinsically governed, because at the end of the day, they can only connect to data that the user can already access through Microsoft Graph. They can only retrieve data. They can only be published through various Microsoft 365 channels. And so if you think about, hey, how would I further secure and govern this? It's probably pretty much secure governed out of the box. But as we shift over towards Copilot Studio authored agents and those that are built using Azure AI Foundry, of course, we see that there is a greater need for control so that you can control in what context agents run, where they are published, what knowledge sources they can connect to. And our goal across the Power Platform and Copilot Studio is to see to it that we provide you with the managed security, governance, and operational capabilities that you need across your apps that you build in Power Apps, your automations that you build in Power Automate, your agents that you build in Copilot Studio, and the sites that you build through Power Pages. Now, we're going to talk a lot today about how the maker experience for building these agents is influenced through these controls. Because what we see is at the end of the day, we're balancing your need to manage risk with enabling innovation. You have folks across your organization, whether it's yourself or others in your department, that are wanting to build the next wave of agents to help them be more productive. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have a number of folks, sometimes in your security organization, sometimes in your CIO's organization, that are looking to see to it that the agents that are being built are secured, that they're within the governance and the compliance boundaries and guardrails that your organization needs to set. And so we've clicked into this quite a bit. And what we learned was we keep having the same discussions. They're awesome discussions, don't get me wrong, with the exact same sets of folks, right? CISO's always like, how do you keep me out of the news, right? I want to make sure that my data is protected from threats. The CIO is always like, how do I know folks are coloring within the lines? How do I know how much it's going to cost me? And then we see folks like in your IT ops teams or your operations director that's like, hey, how do I know this thing isn't going to blow up, right? How do I make sure that my phone doesn't ring in the middle of the night telling me that my agent stopped working? And so what we've done is we've focused on really what it means to provide you with a fully managed platform for the agents that you build and deploy within your organization. And what we've done is we've organized our various capabilities into 4 key pillars. The first, to answer those concerns of the CISO. How do we see to it that your data is protected in an AI-first world? For the CIO, how do we govern all of these assets so that they are controllable, that those guardrails are in place, so that people color within the lines? For managed operations, how do we provide you with the change management, application lifecycle management, operational visibility that you need to observe and operate agents at scale? And then also for that same persona, managed availability, to see to it that these applications are always available. Now, one of the things that we see right now, and it's funny, that we're in Seattle as we do this, because so much of Seattle's history was actually as a jumping off point for the Alaskan gold rush right now, right? We're in a bit of a gold rush where everybody's trying to build an agent. How many of you have built an agent so far? How many of you are going to build one after you leave, right? I think at this point, everybody's hands have gone up. And the thing is, what we find is, as organizations are trying to empower people to build agents, let's be real, you know, I'm a product manager, I'm not an engineer. I probably should not be able to build the most advanced agent that everybody in Microsoft uses, right? Because I may not possess the skills to make sure that I'm building a secure agent. And so what we do is we see organizations across verticals, whether we're talking finance, healthcare, government, so on and so forth, employing what we call a zoned governance model, okay? Sometimes you'll see that these use color coding, so it's like there's the green, yellow, red for, you know, go, slow down, stop, right? Or zone 1, 2, 3. My personal favorite, one of our customers, Heineken, they named their zones after their beers, okay? And so the green zone, where people can come in and build things completely self-service, fully DIY, but within a constrained set of boundaries, that's their Heineken 0.0, right? Their alcohol-free zone. And then zone 2, where they engage with IT as they look to share or distribute their agents more broadly. That's Heineken Silver. And then zone 3 at the far right is just normal Heineken, okay? But the idea here is that it's important that anybody is able to start building agents, but it's going to be necessary to constrain where those agents can be published, how those agents can be shared, what type of data those agents can access, many other things as well. And so I'd like to walk you through how we allow you to define, steer, and guide makers within Copilot Studio. And so first, to start, how many of y'all use SharePoint? Everybody, right? How many of y'all would use SharePoint if, when you went to upload a document, it dumped every person in your company in the exact same SharePoint site? Right? And yet, if we look at how people have used Power Platform and Copilot Studio historically, when people go to create their first agent, their first app, their first automation, where do they get placed? They get placed in the default environment, right? And so what environment routing does is it provides every maker in your organization with a personal playground, a sandbox through which they can go and they can build solutions for themselves. And of course, because you're now stamping out one environment after another for everyone in your organization, you need to govern these things at scale. And so what we've done is we've introduced environment groups, which allow you to group similar environments, including all of those personal developer environments that we were talking about a moment ago. And then you're able to define rules that define policy, which gets stamped onto each and every one of those environments. Additionally, those settings that have been governed through these policies cannot be overridden by your environment makers. The other thing is we see that each organization has unique guidelines around how people can build and use agents. And so what we've done is we've introduced maker onboarding so that when I come to the maker portal as a developer for the very first time, I get my organization's guidance and instructions on how I can use agents within my organization. Now, imagine for a moment I've built an awesome agent. We'll call it, I don't know, my awesome agent. And I think it's so cool. I want to share it with the entire organization. The thing is that a good thing, right? It might not be, because what we see is at the end of the day, the risk of any agent is directly proportional to how broadly it's shared. And so we have sharing limits that allow you to govern how broadly agents can be shared within your organization so that you can control that risk. Now, it's also really important that while we may constrain sharing, that we do have a proper process through which we can share and distribute these agents more broadly through our organization. And so this builds heavily upon the application lifecycle management capabilities that we have in Copilot Studio and the rest of the Power Platform. This uses a capability that we call solutions. How many of you are familiar with solutions in Copilot Studio or Power Platform today? Okay. The thing is, many of these makers across our organization may not know what a solution is. I call this, say they don't know how to spell ALM. And so what we do is we have a capability called preferred solution that places all of the new assets that makers create into a solution so that out of the box they're ready to go to be distributed through ALM and deployment practices in your organization. The next thing that we do is if we think about deployment, it doesn't sound like a fun thing that you want to do on a random Tuesday or Wednesday, right? And so as a result, what we do is when makers go to share their agents more broadly through the organization and they encounter a sharing limit, we don't make that a cliff. We don't make that a wall. And what we do is we prompt them to then go share and deploy that agent through a proper production environment so that you start having appropriate change management and oversight and control over how the agents people build get deployed to the rest of your organization. Now, let me ask, how many of you have approved a deployment of some sort before? How many of you have approved a deployment without knowing what's actually in it? Okay, those of you that didn't keep your hand up, you're lying, or your arm's tired. But one of the things that we were thinking is, wait a second, we have this cool AI thing. Why don't we use AI to tell you what the agent does? And so this does a few things. One is it helps the admin know what they're approving, but two is it can also be a helpful tool helping people through your organization discover the agents that exist, okay? And so what I'd love to do, I know that I just showed you like 11 billion slides very quickly. I'd like to show you what this looks like within the product. And so, let's see, you can see my screen all right. I've landed within the Copilot studio here. And you'll notice, by the way, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling like Ryan anymore. I'm feeling a little bit more like Johanna. So anyway, I'm now Johanna. And so I have been placed within Johanna's developer environment. And so once again, this environment has been stamped with the rules that my organization has set up and defined. And so if I go in and let's see, I created this little agent earlier today. We'll give it a moment to load here. It has been a week. And so I'm going to test my agent. I think that I need a vacation. That would make sense, right, in the safe travel agent. And so let's see, can I go scuba diving in Fiji? Sounds nice. Fiji? Let's see what happens. Oh, fascinating. I did not know this. Fiji's hyperbaric chamber is currently not in service. Now, of course, I never trust Copilot, so I always follow the citations. And so let's see, I'll expand this and let's do a quick Control F, scuba. It reminds me of Scuba Steve. Do you guys remember that movie? Scuba Steve? Okay, oh, here we go. Scuba divers should be aware that Fiji's hyperbaric chamber is currently not in service and the nearest chambers are in New Zealand and Australia. Is that a long flight? A little bit? Okay. So anyway, my agent is working and it's telling me how it worked, yada, yada, yada. So like, I am super jazzed about this agent. And so I'm going to try to publish this agent more broadly. And so let's see, Facebook looks great. So let's do that. And then, drum roll please, wah, wah, you can see my organization has said, I should not be able to publish this agent to Facebook. And this is really important because a lot of times as we're building agents, we're not grounding them in, you know, like the Department of State's website, and rather we're grounding them with sensitive company information, right? And so this provides a really important control to make sure that our internal data is not exposed externally. So, okay, you know what, it's fine. I don't want to share my agent with everybody on the planet. Maybe I just want to share it with everybody else at Microsoft. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my agent overview, and I'm going to go and I'm going to try to share this agent. And let's see, there were a few people that helped me build this agent. And so I'm going to try to share it with them. Let's see, we'll share it with David, and we'll share it with Ryan, other Ryan. Okay, but you'll see right here, we're actually saying, hey, you know what? You can't share this agent more broadly. And the reason why is because within my organization, my administrators have gone in and said, hey, you know what? We don't think you should be sharing your agents willy-nilly across the organization. But we don't want that to be a cliff. And so right here, I have a button to start the deployment process so that instead of sharing out of my development environment, I'm submitting this to be deployed into a production environment. And so if I click this button right there, I have this tab. We can see that I'm automatically pointed to a pipeline that will help me deploy my solution to production, and it requires approval, right? This is IT having oversight over how broadly my agent can be deployed. And so if I click deploy here, I've done that in the next tab, we'll see that I get a set of deployment notes, and then you'll notice those AI-generated agent descriptions right here. Function provides answers to common travel questions and related health and safety guidelines. I think 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 would count.
I think so.
Okay, good. So I can click deploy, and then of course, that will go to my admin for approval. They will see that description, and then that agent will be made available to the rest of my organization. So hopefully you can see how the combination of governance capabilities combined with our managed operations capabilities provide you with ways to establish guardrails around what can be built, as well as how broadly that can be shared. Now, I also think, given that this is build, I have to make sure that I don't just talk about how we build low-code and no-code agents, but also how this integrates with the broader tool chains that you all probably have as professional developers. And so a couple weeks ago, we announced general availability of our native source control integration. The idea being that, of course, all of the changes that you are making in your Power Platform environments will be seamlessly synchronized into your source control system. The other thing that's very interesting is, once again, beyond just the source control integration, this allows you to integrate with your broader engineering systems and tool chains that you have deployed. Also, like any software, agents are never done. And so within the Copilot Studio Toolkit, how many of you have heard of the Copilot Studio Toolkit? Okay, a few of you. Within that, we have tools for you to build test automation as well, so that you can generate test cases, you can validate the scenarios that your agent's supposed to deliver, and also perform those automatically so that you can see to it that the agents that you're deploying to your organization are of high quality. And then, of course, as people build agents that are high quality, and those agents potentially need to be deployed over and over and over again to different business units, different parts of your company if you're a multinational organization. We also have Power Catalog, which allows you to distribute agents across your tenant. This also works with Power Apps and Power Automate as well. Beyond that, we're always trying to improve the quality of our agents as well. And so within the Maker portal, we provide you with the analytics capability, or conversation analytics. And this helps you understand how effective your agent is being, which outcomes, triggers, and actions are being used by the agents that you've built, as well as allows you to see the distribution of usage across different topics. And of course, if you're looking to do more than what we provide from an analytics perspective out of the box, you can also connect Microsoft Copilot Studio to application insights so that you'll have richer monitoring and diagnostics as well. Now, if we zoom out for a moment, and this is one place where I'm going to talk about something that's not as Maker related, though it is now available to environment admins, the Copilot Hub. How many of you managed to keep up with all the changes going on with Copilot agents? Yeah, I can't even put my hand up. So one of the things that we've done here is we've actually centralized, a feed, if you will, of all the new capabilities that are available through Copilot Studio and the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 when it comes to agents. We've provided you with a single place where you can configure how these different capabilities can be used within an environment or across multiple environments. And we also provide you with insight into how agents are being used across different scenarios. We're also super excited to announce a limited preview of agent inventory, because one of the things that we've heard from you is I cannot secure, govern, or operate the things that I cannot see. And so to give you a quick glance at what that looks like, I'm going to go to this tab right here, and let's see, it's build. And so I built a build agent, and so we can see right there very quickly and easily I can locate, you know, the build agent within my, my organization. And so I know that's been a whirlwind. I'd love to hand things over to Shawn to talk about cost management.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. Cool. All right, so how many folks understand Copilot Studio licensing? All right, good. Okay. Well, we've heard there's a lot of questions about it, so we wanted to make it easier and more approachable for you to understand your investment in Copilot, to be able to govern it, and then to be able to optimize it as well. And so to do that, we're making some great improvements to the product. First is the announcement this week of a new cost estimator, consumption estimator for Copilot Studio called the Copilot Studio Agent Consumption Estimator. This estimator will allow you to model the costs of your agents before you build it to get a better understanding of what that investment is going to look like over time. In addition to that, once the agents are deployed in your tenant, we now have great visibility into how those agents are consuming messages by agent, by product, by environment, and we allow you to control those investments by allocating capacity to specific environments. So I'm going to show you that in a demo in just a second. Coming soon, in June, in preview, we are going to have the ability for you to actually set agent level consumption limits. And when those limits are hit, you can either send yourself a notification or you can actually have the agent automatically stop working and shut down. So to take a look at what that looks like, let me click over to a demo. There we go. All right, I will flip over to the demo screen here. All right, the first thing I wanted to show you is the Copilot Studio Agent Usage Estimator. So let's imagine we have that agent that Ryan built earlier for his company. We can choose to either enter manually the capacity characteristics of the agent, or we can leverage the data that Microsoft collected across lots of different customers about typical patterns of usage within agents. So let's take that option. Let's assume that Ryan's agent gets about 1,000 users. Let's assume that they used it about 3 times a month. And you see the estimate starting to come together there. We also have parameters that you can configure, such as whether the agent is employee-facing or external. The reason that's important is because if it is employee-facing and some of those employees have Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses, then any usage within Microsoft 365 products is actually included. We don't charge extra messages for that. So let's say about 800 of those users actually have Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses. All right, and then we can choose orchestration type. Generative is going to give me a richer set of answers across a broader range of data sources, so I'll choose that. Let's say that I'm using knowledge sources in about 80% of the queries, and about 25% of those are from tenant graph grounding, and the rest are coming from actions and topics. Let's say I have some flows associated that are triggered by the agent. Let's say I have about 5 flows to execute various different processes. And let's say those flows are going to run about 1,000 times each month. So that will all sum together. And again, using the heuristics and patterns that we've seen across agents that are used in the wild, we actually are able to generate an estimate of messages per month that will be incurred by this particular agent. Now, to get from here to an actual dollar estimate, we provide the one message equals $0.1 that you see, 0.01. You can multiply that through and use your respective currencies to understand what your actual agent costs are going to be. So again, a very convenient way to understand your agent costs before you actually go and build those agents. All right, so once you have agents deployed in your tenant, the next question is, how much are these agents costing me? How can I govern the costs associated with the deployments that I actually have? So within the Power Platform Admin Center, we have a new licensing tab that you see here. You can click over to Copilot Studio, and here you can get an end-to-end view of all the messages consumption within your tenant. With Copilot Studio, we provide flexibility to either have prepaid messages or to pay-as-you-go. You can use those in combination within a tenant. You can use those in combination even within an environment as well. So we give you this end-to-end view here about your overall capacity usage across the tenant. I can drill into that. I can see trends. We go back up to 12 months when we look at message consumption trends. I can go down and view by environments and see how my environment's performing. As you see in this example here, we have one environment here in Naranjan manual test that's gone quite over the capacity that I originally wanted it to have as an admin. And so we can drill into that environment, Let's go to CL environments, drill into that, and we can see what's happening in that environment to drive that capacity. I'll scroll down here. You see that this environment is using a lot of the prepaid messages there. Go down further, and we can see exactly which agents are using those messages within that environment, and we can see which features those agents are using as well. That's really driving that utilization. So again, we want to provide a lot of transparency so you can understand exactly where your agent consumption is coming from. So now that we've got that environment set up here, I can go to Manage Messages, and I can see that I originally allocated 500 messages, to this environment, but over 129,000 have been consumed. Well, that's not good. Okay, so there's different ways to control this that we now provide to admins. In this case, we've selected that the environment should go ahead and draw down from tenant level capacity when that 500 that it's been allocated has been consumed. Now that's an option. I could turn that off if I want to keep it constricted to the 500. The other thing I'll mention is that this is a great way to do cost allocation across departments in your organization. So when I allocated the 500, no other environments can consume that 500. It's reserved for that particular environment, which has been a big concern with a lot of our large enterprises. The other option I have as well is that I can choose to burst and start billing to pay-go when that 500 is exceeded by going ahead and selecting a pay-as-you-go billing plan here. The billing plan has a link to an Azure subscription, and when I hit that 500, if I set that up, it will go ahead and bill pay-as-you-go to Azure. And of course, I can send a notification to myself if I want to be warned when that value is being approached as well, and take appropriate action. All right, the other capability that we have coming soon is the ability to actually restrict consumption at an agent level. So I'll go back to the main page here. I'll click on Manage, I'll click on Manage Agents, there we go. And here I get an end-to-end view of all the agents across all the environments of my tenant and what they're consuming right now. I can pick a particular agent. I can go ahead and set a limit on that agent. Right now we've got a limit of 10,000 messages associated with this particular agent. When that limit is hit, I have two options. I can choose to turn it off when it reaches 100% so that no more messages will be consumed, or I can choose to just send myself a notification, or I can choose to do both of those things. So again, we provide you that flexibility. If you have an agent that you want to be alerted to, but you don't want to shut down immediately, just go ahead and send an alert. If you have agents that people are just kicking the tires on, but you don't want them to spend more than a certain amount, you can go ahead and set agent level notifications. All right, so I'll flip back to thing. So as you can see, what we're trying to do there is provide you great visibility into what you're consuming, great governance over that, and a path to optimize your agent spend. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about how you set up your governance across your tenant. We've talked about how you manage your costs. Let's talk a bit about the resiliency that we have in our infrastructure to support your agent deployments. Today with the Power Platform, we have organizations across multiple industries running mission-critical applications on the platform. Finance, healthcare, you name it. The reason customers have confidence in the Power Platform to do so is because of the way we've architected our application on Azure. We are one of the largest SaaS providers in the world running on the Azure infrastructure. We think we're the largest one of the largest ones in the world across any infrastructure. And we're leveraging capabilities like Azure Availability Zones. And what that means is that anytime that you interact with data in your environments, we are synchronously writing that data to multiple different availability zones within an Azure region. Each of those availability zones comprises data centers. So if there's an issue with one of those data centers, say a weather event for some reason, or maybe a network connection is cut and it takes out one of those zones, we automatically fail over to an additional zone that hasn't been affected. Very seamless, very downtime here. It seamlessly fails over and your applications keep up and running. So that availability zone capability allows us to mitigate disasters that impact data centers within a region. A new capability that we released just this past month in general availability is the ability to mitigate disasters that impact entire regions themselves. And so with self-serve disaster recovery, which is that new capability, we allow you to create a second copy in a paired Azure region, and then to choose when to fail over to that second copy. And I'll demo that in just a second, but we give you that control about whether to execute a failover or not. This is very important for many organizations because you want to understand what your potential data loss is before you pull the trigger and decide to fail over. And there may be other considerations you have to hit your RTO and RPO objectives. So to take a look at how that works, let's dive into Power Platform Admin Center. And I'll go to the environments view within Power Platform Admin Center. And I'll click on an environment here. I'll load that up. And then to enable disaster recovery for this environment, I'll click on disaster recovery. I'll turn it on, and I'll go ahead and save that. Now, the first time you set up disaster recovery, there is a replication process that takes some time to complete as we move that environment's data to the secondary region. So instead of waiting for that to complete, I've got another environment which I set up earlier for disaster recovery. Let me open that up. And this one has already replicated to its secondary region. And now I can go ahead and start leveraging the disaster recovery capabilities. So one of the key capabilities we have as part of this is the ability to do a disaster recovery drill. Many organizations are working in regulatory environments that require them to do disaster recovery drills on a regular basis. And so we allow you to do that with this capability, and there's no data loss that happens when you do a disaster recovery drill to make sure everything is up and running and working. This has been a key capability. We know for many of our partners that bid contracts in the financial services space. One of our partners in Australia recently told us that they were in a bake-off against a number of other business application platform providers for business with a bank in Australia. And this was the only platform that supported the regulatory requirements to conduct DR drills on a regular basis. No other platform could do it, thanks to the capability that we see here. So with a DR drill, we make that happen. The other option we have is an emergency response. And so if, in case of an actual disaster, I would want to fail over. But before I do that, I would want to understand if there's any potential data loss that I'm going to hit as I do that. As you see here, we provide information on what the last sync time was, 9:26 p.m. We're in a different time zone for this computer. As you see that it's 9:31 p.m., so I lose a few minutes of data, and I can make a judgment call as an admin whether or not to take that data loss and do the failover or not. So with those capabilities, we want to ensure that your agents are up and running on very stable infrastructure. All right, so let's change gears and talk about security. Besides licensing, besides the governance aspect, security is one of the key capabilities we get asked about a lot when it comes to agent development. We made a big investment over the past year to take all the different security capabilities that we have across the platform and make them easier to access through a single interface called the Power Platform Admin Center Security Hub. Security Hub provides a single location to view security posture, to get recommendations on how to improve that posture, and to take action on those recommendations. So to see how that works, let me dive into it. There we go. So this is the Security Hub in the Power Platform Admin Center. As you see here, I have an opportunity to improve. There's no judgment here, it's just a score. There's definitely opportunities. I can click on the information button to understand how the score is calculated. We basically look at all the best practices we've developed over many years working with thousands of customers, and we incorporate them into a numeric store after looking at the state of your tenant and the environments within it. I can go ahead and scroll down and see exactly what recommendations would help improve my score and how much they would help improve my score by. So in this case, turning on IP firewall, if I want to do that, I can take immediate action on those things and go ahead and improve my score. Now, another capability that we've made available recently is the ability to dismiss certain recommendations. We've heard from customers that in many cases, you have solutions for these recommendations already. So you want to be able to dismiss them so they don't negatively impact your score. So let's go ahead and dismiss them. I have to provide a reason. So in this case of IP firewall, let's say I have another IP firewall solution. So I've solved that. I can go ahead and click dismiss, and that will now appear in the dismissed recommendations list. Or it should appear in just a second. It wouldn't be billed if something didn't break. Just remember that. And so it's super hot off the press here. Well, what you will see, momentarily, is the dismissed recommendation here, along with the fact that we've logged this. We logged who dismissed it, and then the reason they dismissed it. And this is also logged to Purview as well, so it's available in the unified application log. So I'll go ahead and I can undismiss that as well if I change my mind later on. But there you go. And the score changes accordingly as well as you dismiss those recommendations. So with Security Hub, again, we want to make it really easy for people to understand what their current security posture is, and then how to improve it as well. All right. Now, we know that security is a shared responsibility between us as a service provider and our customers. We provided Security Hub to make it easy to understand the settings that you have as an admin to tweak. But we also know it's a shared responsibility between the makers, those building applications in your tenant, and the admins as well. And so to help make it easier for makers to understand their security requirements, we're introducing an agent protection status in Copilot Studio itself. Now, the agent protection status provides an easy way for makers to understand any risks associated with their agent as they're building it. You'll see this in Copilot Studio now. It reflects risks such as jailbreak XPIA, any errors associated with policy violations like the DLP policy violation that Ryan showed earlier as he was trying to share his application. And it provides guidance on remediation paths that the maker can take to go and fix those particular risks. So in tandem with the Security Hub, we think the agent protection status in Copilot Studio is going to provide a great way for organizations to ensure that their agent deployments are secure across the tenant. Another capability we wanted to highlight is our support for virtual networks, which we announced earlier this year too. When you're building an agent, obviously connecting to on-premises resources or connecting to resources that you may be running already in your cloud can really help liven up and enrich your agent and make it more functional. So today we provide a capability to do that via a data gateway, where you can configure a data gateway to go ahead and connect to your on-premises resources from the Power Platform itself. We heard a lot of feedback from customers that maintaining such a gateway is expensive, it's difficult, and they were looking for an easier way. So in response to that feedback, we've now created the ability for you to configure an Azure VNet to have outbound connections run in the context of that VNet. So anytime you build an agent with one of the supported connectors, any traffic coming from those connectors to resources in your Azure infrastructure or on premises will flow across the VNet that you've configured. This has been a huge game changer for many security conscious organizations. Toyota, one of our key customers, recently used this this past fall to build an agent that had to access some of their on-premises resources. So it is something that is being leveraged today. Right now, we have support for 8 connectors that you see here on the screen. We are currently announcing a preview of support for additional connectors, like the ability to connect to Application Insights, to make HTTP calls to Key Vault from MCS itself. So that is definitely a new capability that we have coming up. So to show how that works, let me drive forward here. Let me dive back to the demo screen. Okay. So I've got an agent here that I've made for a healthcare company called 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗳𝗏. This agent is designed to help provide patient information for workers at the site. And it can help provide patients as well with information about how to book appointments and so forth. So I've got this agent currently wired up to Application Insights. The way it's configured, however, is that that Application Insights instance is running in the context of a virtual network. So I'm going to go ahead and interact with this agent, and then let's see what comes up in Application Insights. So I'm going to be a patient, and I'm going to say, how can I schedule an appointment? Oh, forgive my spelling. There we go. Searching the knowledge source I have on this, and I've got a policies file with appointment scheduling. Great. So it gives me a response about how I can schedule an appointment on phone and online and so forth. And so now this is wired up to Application Insights. I want to go and actually see what the results are. Now I'm going to access Application Insights from a PC, this one, that is not on the virtual network. And you see I get this networking error here that I cannot access the Application Insights instance because it's protected by the VNet. This machine is not on that VNet. But I have a VM running that is actually on that VNet in Azure as well. I'm going to go ahead and run this query. Oops. Oh, interesting. That did not work. Okay. What you would see here is actually the results from Application Insights from that agent. And that was working just before the presentation. All right. So we don't get the networking error, though. As you can see, we're on the VNet with this machine. And the results, if they're not showing up now, they should show up pretty soon. All right, so that was only one example of how we support a VNet with Application Insights. Again, like I said, we do support other sources as well. Please feel free to go ahead and give that a try. Go back to our, all right. Another set of big announcements we're making this week are related to keeping data secure as you make agents. So to do that, we are increasingly bringing a lot of the capabilities that exist within Microsoft Purview to the Power Platform world. Today, we're announcing the GA of the Data Map connector for Dataverse. That allows you to connect from Purview to Dataverse, to scan the data that's in Dataverse, to discover any type of sensitive information. You know, it could be social security numbers, could be other personally identifiable information. We have a number of built-in pattern matches in Purview. If those don't fit your needs, you can go ahead and customize them yourself as well. So with Data Map, you can quickly discover and understand exactly what's in your data estate when it comes to Dataverse. The other capability that we're previewing is the ability to auto-label that sensitive information. So you can automatically have Purview assign confidential, highly confidential labels to that information as well. Building on that, we are bringing that sensitive information into agent development by bringing it into Copilot Studio. So today, if you build an agent that leverages a SharePoint-based source, and those assets within SharePoint, the files are actually labeled confidentially, if that agent returns those files or returns information from those files, it will label those responses accordingly. So if you have a highly confidential file, then the response will be labeled highly confidential as well. So this works today for SharePoint. And in preview, very soon, we'll have this work for other sources as well. Dataverse being one that I mentioned earlier, SQL, and we're bringing other M365 sources like Excel, Word Connector will work as well, and additional Azure sources as well will work too, like blob storage and so forth. So to see how this works, let me jump back to the demo. It's up here. Okay, here I have another agent I've made for WordGrowth Health. This one is designed to help employees pull up patient information. Within this agent, I have two data sources. One is SQL-based, the other is Dataverse-based. I'll click into the Dataverse one. I will click on a preview of it. And as you see, the labels are applied to the data in the Dataverse instance. In this case, the address field is highly confidential. The patient's name is actually general. So when I interact with this agent, those labels should show up as well. So let me go ahead and say, what is patient Amanda's last name? This is a pre-prod environment, and sometimes it takes a little bit to warm up. Let me ask again. All right, so it's sending out to the sources, it's searching them, and it is returning Amanda Smith is the last name, that is marked as general. So let's ask another question. Is her address? All right, so it returns the address, and that is marked as highly confidential, as it was in the Dataverse data source. So as you see with Purview integration with the Power Platform, we can ensure data governance across the spectrum of usage, right? Whether you're using it in agents or other scenarios, we do support MIP labels flowing through. All right, so let me jump back to this. Go. Okay, so to wrap it up, invite Ryan back. We have a number of different resources for you. We have a Build blog today that summarizes all the announcements we're making here at Build related to governance. We also have a great set of Power Platform guidance that's come together. We've put a big effort in refreshing what our guidance looks like around building and architecting on the Power Platform. Please check that out. And we have some additional sessions we'd encourage you to check out over the next 2 days.
And if I could build on that, Shawn, a few sessions that I'd encourage y'all to check out. We have, let's see, we have Zohar and Asaf's breakout on what it looks like from an admin perspective to do many of the things that we talk about today. Also, Aisha from Microsoft IT is going to be sharing how she uses these tools to manage the Microsoft tenant with only 5 admins. That's like 200 and something thousand employees, and it all comes down to those folks. So really cool session you should check out. Also, Casey and either Mark, I think it's Mark, are doing a session that goes into a deep dive around GitHub Git integration for source control, application lifecycle management, deployment hub, and monitoring hub as well. And then we also have some on-demand sessions as well you should check out. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you see how today you can more effectively secure, govern, operate, and maintain availability of your agents. Take care and have a good one.
Take care.